The desert night lay silent, broken by the crack of a revolver. William fired into the darkness, his hand steady though his breath trembled. Smoke curled from the barrel, the acrid scent of gunpowder mixing with dry dust. He muttered, "Another ghost silenced, but they still haunt me." His boots pressed deep into the sand as the town's lanterns flickered against the horizon. A dog barked far away, then silence reclaimed the streets. William scanned the shadows, eyes sharp, haunted by memories of blood and betrayal. The whiskey in his gut burned, but not enough to numb the ache inside. He whispered, "Clayton's law ends tonight." The town seemed to breathe with him, waiting for the storm he carried in his soul. His revolver hung heavy at his side, a promise of vengeance yet unpaid. Inside the saloon, the smell of whiskey mixed with smoke. William leaned against the bar, his hand never straying far from the revolver on his hip. The barkeep slid him a glass, muttering, "Men like you stir storms." William swallowed the burning liquid, eyes fixed on his reflection in the cracked mirror. His voice was low, "Storm's already here." The piano in the corner sat broken, keys gathering dust like forgotten dreams. Shadows clung to every corner, hiding whispers of betrayal. Outside, silence pressed hard, but inside the saloon, William's heartbeat was louder than any gunshot. He knew Clayton's eyes would find him soon, and when they did, blood would follow. Sheriff Clayton entered the saloon, boots clicking against warped floorboards. His badge gleamed under lantern light, polished like his false smile. "William," Clayton said, "you should have stayed gone." William's eyes narrowed, fingers tapping his revolver. Tension thickened, thicker than the stale air. Clayton leaned on the bar, voice smooth. "Law here bends to those strong enough to hold it." William replied, "Law's only as strong as the man behind the gun." The barkeep froze mid-wipe, knowing a spark could set the whole room ablaze. Silence spread like firewood waiting for a flame. Claire entered, every step quiet yet commanding. Her dress was dark red silk, standing out against dust-stained wood. She looked at William, her lips curling into a smile that carried secrets. "Didn't think you'd return," she said, voice smooth as whiskey. William replied, "Some debts need settling." Clayton's gaze flickered between them, suspicion stirring. Claire's eyes glimmered with something unspoken, an unsteady balance between betrayal and desire. William felt her presence like a blade at his back, dangerous, sharp, irresistible. The air thickened, silence filled with tension sharper than steel. Thomas burst into the saloon, younger and restless, his boots too loud for the tension inside. "William," he said, voice eager, "I'll stand with you." William shook his head, whispering, "You don't know the weight of this fight." Thomas's jaw tightened, determination unshaken. Clayton chuckled coldly, "Boy, you'll be buried before you even draw." Claire's eyes darted, reading the chaos like cards on a table. William finally spoke, "If he stays, his blood's on your hands, Clayton." The silence that followed was heavy, every soul in the room knowing fate had just stepped inside. The desert sun burned high as William rode beyond the town, his horse kicking dust across the barren trail. He stopped near a lonely grave marked by a crooked cross. Kneeling, he pressed his calloused hand to the dry soil. His voice cracked, "I failed you, but vengeance will not slip from me again." The wind howled, carrying whispers of memory, flashes of fire, and the screams of his family. He gritted his teeth, the pain fresh as the day it began. His revolver gleamed in the light, a promise carved in steel. William rose slowly, eyes cold, and muttered, "Clayton will pay in blood." His shadow stretched long, a dark echo of the man he once was. Henry sat on the porch of his cabin, pipe smoke curling in the dry air. His eyes carried years of battles lost and won. William stood before him, fists clenched, demanding wisdom. Henry said, "You chase ghosts, son. Revenge swallows men whole." William's jaw tightened as he answered, "These ghosts wear Clayton's face." Henry coughed, voice deep as gravel. "Killing him won't fill the hole they left." Silence stretched between them, heavy with truth neither wanted to bear. William turned away, but Henry's words gnawed at him. deeper than any wound. Thomas followed William down the dusty road, his youthful energy clashing with the silence of the desert. "I can fight," Thomas insisted, his voice full of fire. William snapped, "You don't know the weight of killing." Thomas's eyes flashed. "I've lost too, and I won't stand idle." William paused, the boy's words echoing pieces of his own youth. For a brief moment, he saw himself, unscarred, burning with hope. William muttered, "Hope will get you killed out here." Thomas replied, "Steady, or it might save us." William walked on, haunted by the truth in the boy's conviction. Inside the saloon's back room, Claire leaned against the wall, shadows painting her face in half-light. William entered, suspicion heavy in his eyes. She smirked, voice silk and steel. "You never trusted me, did you?" William replied coldly, "Trust gets men killed." Her hand brushed the table, revealing a hidden letter sealed with Clayton's mark. She whispered, "I know his secrets, but secrets cut both ways." William stepped closer, her perfume mixing with smoke and dust. For a heartbeat, the air burned with unspoken desire and danger. Claire's eyes softened before hardening again, a storm trapped behind calm. Sheriff Clayton walked the main street at dusk, every step echoing authority. Townsfolk lowered their heads, avoiding his gaze. A farmer begged quietly, "Please, Sheriff, mercy." Clayton's lips curled into a cold smile. "Mercy?" he said. "Order comes at a price." His deputies loomed behind him, rifles gleaming in fading light. Fear spread like fire through dry grass, gripping every soul in the town. From a shadowed corner, William watched, his jaw clenched. He whispered, "This ends with one of us in the ground." The setting sun painted the street blood red, sealing the promise of reckoning. The dusty street trembled with tension as William faced 3 of Clayton's hired guns. Their hands hovered near revolvers, eyes sharp as blades. William's voice cut through the silence, "Best walk away before the dirt takes you." One gunman spat, "You're a ghost already, outlaw." The townsfolk peered from cracked windows, holding breaths, waiting for blood to spill. William's fingers twitched, years of violence guiding every nerve. The sun scorched above, turning sweat to salt on his skin. A crow cawed in the distance, breaking silence like a warning bell. William whispered, "Ghosts don't die twice." Then his revolver gleamed in the burning light. After the standoff, whispers rippled through the saloon. Men hunched close, their voices sharp as broken glass. "Clayton owns the law, but William bleeds defiance," one muttered. Another hissed, "Defiance gets graves dug quicker." Fear coated the room heavier than smoke. Cards sat untouched on the tables, whiskey left warm in forgotten glasses. The barkeep polished endlessly, eyes darting to the doors as though expecting death to walk in. The piano, silent as a coffin, loomed like a ghost. Outside, boots clattered faintly, a reminder the streets were no longer safe. The town held its breath, knowing the storm was only beginning. Claire slipped into the alley, pressing a folded note into William's hand. Her eyes flickered, half fear, half resolve. "Clayton moves at dawn," she whispered. William studied her, voice low. "Why help me now?" Claire's lips tightened. "I'm done being his shadow." She glanced over her shoulder, trembling at unseen eyes. William stepped closer, whispering, "Betray him, and you'll never walk safe again." Claire's gaze burned, fragile yet defiant. "I'd rather burn with you than rot with him." The alley stank of whiskey and rot, but her words cut sharp, a spark in the suffocating dark. Thomas stormed into the street, revolver shaking in his grip. He shouted at one of Clayton's men, "Face me!" The hired gun laughed, drawing slow and cruel. William lunged forward, shoving Thomas aside as the shot cracked. Dust exploded near their boots. Thomas gasped, rage in his eyes. "I'm not weak." William snarled, "You're alive because of me." The boy's chest heaved, tears mixed with sweat on his face. The hired gun smirked, "Clayton's gonna hang you both." William raised his revolver, voice steady. Not tonight. The street reeked of smoke and fear, the boy's lesson carved in near death. Henry stepped from the shadows, rifle steady in his scarred hands. The hired gun froze, sneer fading under the weight of age and precision. Henry growled, "Boys playing with death don't last long." His shot cracked, kicking dust at the man's boots, a warning older than law. William turned, anger mixing with gratitude. Henry said, "Your time's running out. Clayton's no man to toy with." Thomas swallowed hard, eyes wide with both fear and awe. William's voice was grim. "Then tomorrow we end it." The desert wind howled through the silent street, carrying the promise of blood at dawn. William tore through Clayton's office, drawers crashing open, dust rising in the lamplight. His hand froze on a ledger stained with old ink. Names, dates, payments. His family's farm marked as debt paid in blood. Rage gripped his chest as if the past had shot him anew. "He signed their death," William muttered, voice trembling with fury. His hand shook against the page, the truth branding him harder than fire. Behind him, floorboards creaked. Henry's voice cut low, "Some truths burn worse than lies." William slammed the book shut, revolver trembling in his grip, and whispered, "Now I know why they died." Claire sat at a worn table, candlelight flickering across her face. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I was his once. Clayton owned me like land." William's eyes hardened, his silence heavier than chains. She continued, "He kept me close to control me, to watch men like you fall." William muttered, "And now you choose me?" Claire's eyes shimmered, torn between guilt and resolve. "I choose freedom," she said, clutching the edge of her dress. Her shadow stretched long, trembling across the walls like a confession set loose. William's revolver rested on the table, caught between trust and suspicion. Thomas crouched near the stables, eavesdropping as Clayton's deputies whispered. "At dawn, ambush at the canyon," one hissed. Another spat, "We'll bury him where the sun don't reach." Thomas's heart pounded, fists clenching against fear. He stumbled back, nearly kicking a bucket, but the men kept talking. "Clayton wants it messy," the deputy sneered. Thomas ran through the night, boots pounding against dirt, breath sharp as fire. His youth trembled, but his resolve burned brighter. When he burst into William's path, words spilled fast, "They're waiting at the canyon. It's a trap." His face pale, eyes wide with terror. Henry leaned heavy on his rifle, eyes clouded with old guilt. William's stare cut sharp, "You knew." Henry's silence was answer enough. His voice cracked, "Clayton was my partner once. I built his empire before I saw the rot." William's fists clenched, fury mixing with betrayal. Henry said, "I walked away, but ghosts don't walk far." Thomas shouted, "You helped him kill." Henry's jaw tightened, "I never pulled the trigger, but I paved the road." The air throbbed with silence heavier than bullets. William's voice broke low, "Then you're no different." Henry lowered his gaze, shame carved deep. William sat alone by the campfire, shadows dancing on his scarred face. The truth clawed at him, every ally bound to blood and betrayal. Claire approached softly, her eyes restless, yet she stayed silent. Thomas sharpened his blade, every stroke angry, sparks like sparks of youth turned hard. Henry stood at a distance, broken, a man weighed by sins. William whispered, every hand stained, "Who can I trust?" The fire crackled, its light fading into endless desert dark. The stars above offered no answer, only the cold truth. Tomorrow would demand everything. William's grip tightened on his revolver. William stood in the desert clearing at dawn, revolver spinning in his hand with sharp precision. Each click echoed like a drumbeat of war. Sweat dripped, but his gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. He fired at bottles lined on a fence, each shattering under his relentless aim. His breath was ragged, heart burning with fury and fear. "This ends with blood," he muttered. Thomas watched, eyes wide, whispering, "You're ready." William didn't turn, his voice gravel, "No one's ever ready. You just don't miss." The rising sun painted the world in fire, marking the final march toward reckoning. Thomas stepped forward, determination hardening his young face. "I'll stand with you, William, till the end." His revolver shook slightly, but his voice did not. William's jaw clenched, eyes scanning the boy. "You'll die young if you stay," he said, voice low. Thomas shot back, "Then I'll die fighting for something that matters." William sighed, grief shadowing his scarred face. "You remind me of who I was before the blood." The silence between them cut deep, broken only by the wind. In that moment, William knew the boy's choice was carved in stone, unyielding and final. Claire moved like a shadow through Clayton's quarters, heart pounding as she rifled through drawers. Her hand closed on sealed papers, Clayton's mark pressed deep in wax. She whispered, "This will end him." Footsteps echoed outside, and her breath caught. She pressed against the wall, clutching the documents to her chest. Her reflection in a cracked mirror revealed eyes burning with defiance. "No chains, no master," she muttered, slipping into the dark. For the first time in years, her fear turned to freedom. Somewhere in the night, William's name trembled on her lips like a prayer unspoken. Henry stood in front of William, weathered hands holding his old rifle. "This was mine," he said, voice rough. "It's yours now." William hesitated, staring at the weapon scarred by years of battle. "I don't deserve it," he muttered. Henry's eyes, heavy with regret, met his. "Deserving don't matter. Surviving does." Thomas watched silently, awe flickering in his gaze. William finally reached out, gripping the rifle. The weight pressed heavy, carrying years of blood and redemption. Henry said, "Make it count." The desert wind howled through the camp, carrying old sins and new promises alike. The town square lay silent under the pale glow of dawn. William walked slowly down the center, boots crunching against dust, rifle at his back, revolver at his hip. Windows creaked open, townsfolk watching with held breath. Thomas followed, young face hardened beyond his years. "Human." Claire stood in the shadows, clutching Clayton's secrets, her eyes locked on William. From the far end, Clayton stepped forward, deputies flanking him like vultures. The sun bled across the sky, painting the street in fire. William whispered, "One of us doesn't walk away." Silence broke like glass. The reckoning had arrived. The sun broke over the horizon as William and Clayton faced each other in the empty town square. Dust swirled around their boots, carried by a restless wind. Clayton smirked, his voice cutting sharp, "You should have stayed in the grave your family left behind." William's hand hovered over his revolver, eyes burning with years of rage. "You killed them to build your empire. I'll end it with your blood." The townsfolk watched from behind shuttered windows, the silence louder than thunder. Time seemed to stretch, each breath heavier than the last. The desert itself held still, waiting for the draw. Clayton's boots echoed as he stepped forward, his deputies lined behind with rifles ready. "Law bends to the man holding the badge," he declared, voice thick with arrogance. William spat in the dirt, his grip tightening on his revolver. "Law bends to the man who survives." The crowd of hidden townsfolk held their breath, eyes peering through cracks and curtains. Thomas gripped his revolver, whispering to himself, "Stand tall, William." Claire stood in the shadows, clutching Clayton's papers, her heart racing. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and gunpowder waiting to ignite. The first gunshot cracked, echoing like thunder. Thomas dove behind barrels as splinters exploded into the air. Deputies unleashed fire, bullets cutting through silence and dust. William returned shots, his revolver spitting fire with deadly precision. Clayton stood steady, firing coldly, his eyes locked on William. Glass shattered, horses whinnied, and the street filled with chaos. Thomas scrambled, narrowly avoiding death as a bullet grazed his arm. He hissed in pain but clenched his teeth, refusing to fall. William shouted, "Stay down, boy." The fight raged, every heartbeat carrying the weight of life or death. A bullet streaked toward William, but Claire rushed forward, shoving him aside as it tore through her arm. She cried out, collapsing against him. William caught her, fury igniting his veins. Clayton sneered, "Even your whore can't save you." William's teeth clenched, rage sharpening his focus. Claire's voice trembled, "Don't stop. Finish this." Blood stained her dress, her eyes fierce even in pain. William stood, his revolver gleaming like judgment itself. The street roared with gunfire, but his world narrowed to Clayton's face, the man who stole everything. The final reckoning was seconds away. The final shots rang out. William and Clayton stood across from each other, smoke curling from their guns. Clayton staggered, blood seeping through his coat. His badge gleamed one last time, before he fell to the dirt. William's chest heaved, his revolver trembling in his hand. Thomas rushed to his side, wide-eyed, whispering, "It's done." Claire winced in pain but smiled faintly, her voice weak. "The town is free." William stared down at Clayton's lifeless body, whispering, "Ghosts don't die twice." The street grew silent, the weight of vengeance pressing down heavier than the desert sky. The town gathered in the square, silence heavy as Clayton's body lay still in the dust. Men, women, and children peeked from doorways, their eyes wide with cautious hope. One farmer whispered, "Is it over?" Another muttered, "The sheriff's dead. We're free." William stood motionless, revolver still in hand, the weight of vengeance burning his chest. His breathing was ragged, yet his stance never wavered. Claire leaned against a post, bloodied but alive, her gaze locked on him. Thomas lifted his chin, eyes filled with fire, no longer a boy. The crowd's relief trembled with fear of what would come next. Henry approached slowly, rifle slung across his back, eyes heavy with sorrow and relief. He placed a hand on William's shoulder, the weight of old sins shared. "Clayton's gone," he said quietly, "but ghosts never leave easy." William's jaw tightened, his voice a whisper, "I don't know if I killed him or myself." Henry's gaze softened, his weathered face shadowed by regret. "Redemption's not found in blood, it's found in what you do after." William stared at the sky, the first rays of sun warming his scarred face. The desert wind carried their silence, an answer neither man could speak. Thomas stood taller now, revolver steady in his hand, though his arm trembled faintly. He looked at William with a new fire, his voice clear, "I'm not the boy you met. I'll carry this fight forward." William studied him, seeing both the boy's fragility and the man forming inside. "The world won't spare you," William muttered. Thomas nodded firmly, "Then I won't spare it either." His face was pale from blood loss, but his spirit blazed brighter than the dawn. The street seemed to echo with the passing of torches, the old handing to the young, a legacy written in dust and fire. Claire wrapped her wounded arm, her eyes fixed on the lifeless sheriff's office. For the first time, her chains were broken. She whispered, "I'm free, but freedom feels empty." William looked at her, the silence between them filled with unspoken truths. She met his gaze, tears and defiance mixing in her eyes. "I'll leave this town, find a life that's mine." William nodded, his voice low, "You'll always carry the scars." Claire's lips trembled into a faint smile, better scars than chains. She turned toward the horizon, her silhouette framed by firelight and morning sun. William holstered his revolver slowly, the sound sharp against the silence. He walked down the center of the street, boots heavy, spurs clinking with each step. Behind him, the town exhaled its first breath of freedom, but his heart carried only ghosts. The rising sun cast long shadows, stretching his figure into the dust like a man already gone. He whispered to himself, "Whiskey, guns, and vengeance. That's all I had left." His silhouette faded into the desert horizon, a lone figure scarred by blood and fire. The town would remember him, not as savior, but as the storm that passed.